that crippled us because it was saying we were sold out and we weren't.
Yeah.
And we had numbers to hit.
Hey, Brett Chittum here, Lawrence Systems, and I'm here with
Jason Slagle, CWR.
and
Kyle Spooner, and Telecom Technologies and MSP Geek.
all right, and this is Business Technicalities. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say a few things in the beginning, and then I'm out of this conversation. Not really, but these two guys are going to talk about something that's actually going to be interesting to you, because as in the MSP community, we go to conferences, we have fun, but do we really, we know we pay to go to a conference, but what's the conference pay? What's the economics of an IT conference? And Jason, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, so the first thing I have to say, are you ever really out of any conversation? You certainly like to talk, so I fully expect you will be interjecting here.
I totally like to talk, but yeah, I'll interject a little bit. But I'm going to sit here with my Ted Lasso coffee cup and
That's fine.
drink.
I didn't grab any coffee yet. So yeah, I invited Kyle here to discuss with us some of the economics behind MSP GeekCon. It's a conference that just wrapped up here at the end of May. And I feel like as an MSP for a long time, I did not understand some of these economics and some of the numbers that go around these things. And the way I view them is a little bit different now that I do understand them. I actually understood them before MSP GeekCon, but having participated in some of the planning stuff, I understand it a little better, and we want to bring that understanding to you. So Kyle, why don't you take a couple minutes, introduce yourself, introduce the conference, so we can talk about how awesome it was.
Yeah. So I am vice president of MSP Geek, and I was the one responsible for the planning and execution of MSP GeekCon, which took place in May of this year. And it was, the feedback we got was extraordinary, way above what we were expecting. Vendors loved it. The guests loved it. The MSPs who attended loved it. Everyone had a great time, and we centered around the tech training of the technicians, right? That was our core focus, was making sure we could elevate them. And what surprised me a lot was actually a lot of business owners came in, and a lot of higher level inside of MSPs came and took what they learned back to what their businesses and applied that to a bigger group of people, which was something that was I didn't even think of, but was cool to watch in action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually did not know that. I expected that we would see, I think we had a good number of first-time attendees there and a good number of like level 1, level 2 techs. But we also had a lot of what I will consider the more traditional conference attendees, right? Which are the business owners, the business founders, the type of people I run into at most of the shows I go to. So my immediate thought when they started showing up, or we started seeing them on the registration list, is, you're not really the target audience here, but it sounds like it actually, they ended up to a certain extent being the target audience because they learned a lot and took it back to their people.
Everything we did was better than expected, and it's a weird feeling going in to your very first conference and having people come up to you and be like, "Are you sure this is your first conference?" Yeah. Because everyone assumed that we had done this before, and we had not.
Well, to be fair, we had a couple cheat codes.
We did.
And also, you've been to conferences, and you know what you like at a conference, and you know what you don't like, right? And you guys, from what I wasn't there, I wish I could have been there. I'll blame that on somebody else, not in this video, but you guys, for everything I've heard, and even when we were at the other conference we all were just at, I heard a ton of great stuff about it. So you guys, I think it was your first conference, but you aren't novices at this, right?
I attend a lot of conferences, probably way more than Spooner here does. And one of the things we brought him out to Code Mash, which is a community-run conference for developers actually near here. When we start talking about the economics, I can share a little about what I know about their stuff too, right? Because I think it translates pretty well.
Why don't we talk about the economics?
Let's talk about it right now.
Do it. Yeah. So, there's three main things that I kind of wanted to discuss here, right? Which the first is like, how do the conferences get money, right? Like, I think most people think it's entirely ticket sales. And then, what costs money? And this one, I think people will find very eye-opening. Can of pop is what, $3 to $7. Yeah.
Like 8.
It's crazy. And then other considerations, right? Things that people just don't think about. Things like hotel rooms and stuff like that. So let's get started with where the money comes from. So in the MSP GeekCon world, tickets were $349 early bird, or were they $399? I actually can't remember.
$399 early bird.
Okay. And then $499 regular, or was it $449? Okay. So, sold 300, 400-ish tickets. Right?
We sold, so our target was 300 tickets. We sold 290 something.
Okay. So if you assume they're all early bird, that's what, $80,000?
$86,710.
We ended up a third of our revenue was from ticket sales, just 1/3.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think most people don't realize that, right? Most people assume that when you go to a conference, that when you buy your ticket, it's covering all your costs, and that's basically, sponsors are covering their own costs, and that's how it works.
We'll get into the I built 3 budgets based on my level of understanding growing. Because what I was working with was just like, this isn't going to work. I need to start over.
Yeah.
But the remainder came from sponsorships.
So let's talk about that a little bit, right? Like, so we had 3 sponsor levels, right? Like, there was like the startup, the normal tier, and then the big tier.
So one of the core things that MSP Geek itself as a community is we understand vendors want to get in front of people, and it's a lot harder to do that. So we had a specific tier designed for startup vendors, vendors that don't have a lot of recurring revenue annually, or that are new to the space that want to get in front and try stuff out that they've never done before. So we had a very cheap sponsor. I think it was $3,500 for them to sponsor a standard booth. But they had caveats that they had to in there. And then our other sponsorship, regular sponsorship tier, which was the bulk of our sponsors, was $9,000.
Yeah, 9, I think.
For a 10 by 10 booth, and then we did 20 by 20s for $20,000. And we only had 5 of those, and that's where the bulk of the revenue came from. Was those 2 sources. Generally speaking, with the other vendor-led conferences that are available, they have an entire business surrounding what they're trying to do, so they can bootstrap and insert funds where applicable. We didn't have that, so our revenue has to cover every expense. Otherwise, we got problems.
Right.
That's in stark comparison, though, right? So we held a standard 10 by 10 booth to $9,000, and there was, not to reveal too much, there's a little bit of infighting with that, because I think some of the vendors that were on our planning committee were actually trying to get us to charge more for that. They're like, you guys aren't charging enough money. And Kyle and I are on the other side of it going, we don't want to charge any more money. And it's really weird, that dynamic, how it played out.
Vendors who were helping us plan this, who had done this stuff before, who we were taking advice from, were like, you need to charge more for your sponsorships. And which is just weird, because we're trying to make it cost effective for everyone, not just the MSPs, but for the vendors. And they're preaching to us to charge more, and we're like, no. That was
I'm sure people don't understand, though. I'm sure people that go to conferences don't even understand that vendors pay a ton of money.
Oh yeah. I mean, to give you an idea, I believe IT Nation Connect or Secure is what, $35,000 for an 8x8.
Yeah.
Right. That's insane.
I've seen, I'm not going to name conferences because I'm sure you could just figure it out, but there's another vendor-led conference that you can get a 6-foot table for $40,000, only if you've never been before.
Oh my goodness.
And it's just like, I understand that there's a lot of attendees going to these things, but that's a lot of money to me. It
is a lot of money. I mean, it's there's a vendor in our space who I also won't name because I have not okayed naming it, but they attributed 20% of their cost of their end user to being basically cost of acquisition, which was mostly conferences, right? So 20% of the cost you were paying them for their tool was basically paying for them to go to conferences to attract new customers. That's crazy to me. It's crazy that this is that it's gotten so big. And these, some of these bigger conferences have, multi-million-dollar budgets, right? Like you get a big conference that's, 35, 40 grand a booth and there's 70 people there. You're talking what, $2.8, $3 million just for the normal size booths. And then it goes up from there. Insanity.
That's insanity. But of course, you guys weren't in this to make money, right? So
No.
talk about your costs. That's a good one, right? That's
so the first cost, right, is the venue.
Yeah.
That's where the bulk of the money is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not where you think it's going to go, because this was news to me. So when you book a venue, like a hotel specifically, there's a convention center that's attached. Normally you'd be like, all right, how much is it to rent this space? But they don't look at it that way. They look at it in two ways. You have the estimated number of rooms you can sell for your event, and then the food and beverage minimum that you have to hit, and they'll give you the space for free. Which
really?
is, that sounds, oh cool, I get free space, but you have to do the actual calculation.
Yeah. Space
when
isn't
we
free.
were-
Nothing is free.
Nothing is free.
Yeah.
When we were doing evaluations for where we were going, we wanted a nice place with a cost-effective room rate. Because again, we're trying to make costs manageable for everyone involved, not just the MSPs and for the vendors. So
Go ahead.
so we signed on to sell 800 units of rooms, I believe was the number.
Mm-hmm.
We have to hit 80% of that to be considered good.
Wait, 800 units of rooms.
Yeah.
That's 800 rooms.
800 nights.
A unit is a night.
Okay.
Day. So you have a person in a room for a night. That is a unit.
Okay. All right.
And our conference was for 3 days.
But it's more complicated than that, because we also have to provide, we've kind of moved into the other considerations pieces now, but it's fine. You had to provide when people were going to be there, right? So like basically the room block had 50 is all for Saturday.
Yeah, which
Sold
may
out
have been
really quick.
Naive on our part. But it actually hurt us doing what we did, because so they give you a specific link that where you book your room for. That link is good for the rooms you select for the nights you've selected. And if you default that to Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and you check out on Wednesday, and you have a smaller number for any of those days, as soon as you hit that cap, the entire link is dead and it says you can't book anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
For the day.
So, no. Overall, well, you have to adjust the time, but most people don't know you have to adjust the time to get that back. So that crippled us, because it was saying we were sold out and we weren't.
Yeah.
And we had numbers to hit. And then, so that hurt really bad because we have to sell 80 rooms. Otherwise we're on the hook for we're on the hook for paying for them. That is a contractual obligation. That is an expense to us if we don't sell them. So when we set that all up, we didn't have even numbers across the days, and because we were expecting to have the brunt of the people come in on Sunday and not Saturday, but a lot of people were trying to book an additional day, which, in hindsight makes sense, but is not something we were prepared to do, and that hurt us trying to get those numbers. We hit them barely, but it made it a lot harder for sure.
Yeah, but it's an interesting balancing act, though, right? Because, let's say you had made it 100 on Saturday instead of 50, right? Well, now you have 850 room nights you're responsible for, in theory, right? So can you get the hotel to still make it 800 but have 100 available on set? It's interesting negotiations that take place.
The answer is no, because we tried to get it to up it, and you can make an addendum to the contract that makes you more on the hook for additional units. But I mean, at that point, you're struggling in one area, trying to add in more spots to continue to struggle, and it just didn't make sense to us. So we defaulted the link to be Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and that helped a little bit. And then we just put out information going, hey, if you want to book it here, and if you want to extend it, do so. But that pushed a lot of people to other hotels as well, which was very frustrating.
Yeah. I think that's a thing that was probably the biggest thing that I didn't realize going into this particular thing. Having dealt with CodeMash and some of the others, I did not realize that the event was contractually on the hook for 80% of the allocated room block. So, basically it was like $176,000 worth of room nights or something crazy like that.
159.
Yeah.
And what happens when you don't meet that?
You pay the difference.
We pay the difference.
Okay.
It's an expense that's added to us at the to the master account that they have for us.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why I think you see. So like one of the things CodeMash does that, I'll eventually push for once we mature, is they provide free rooms to the speakers. Right. And I think part of the reason for doing that is, just to help at their minimum. It's like, these are rooms now that we've paid for that we're probably going to end up paying for anyway. So they're like, we're just going to give them away to staff and speakers, which is a nice thing for speakers to not have to pick up their own room.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They actually probably negotiated those rates down for those rooms too.
Yeah, they probably did.
We got 10 rooms cheaper than standard rates.
Yeah.
And did you use those 10 rooms for all you guys and the staff?
Yeah. We had
some staff.
Additional company. Yeah, we had additional company helping us out run the event on site.
Okay.
Great team. But so there's 4 rooms right there that's gone because we have to staff them, and then we have AV company that's another 2 rooms. So
Makes total sense. So that's an interesting one with the hotel and the link and everything. So if I go to a conference and go to click that link and it's not available, I probably should go onto that hotel's website and try to book there anyways.
You could. You can also call and tell them where you're going, what you're going for, and that will apply to their room block to help offset their requirements. Okay. Also, we can run a list at the end and we can match it up.
Oh, okay. And they allow you to do that?
It's just additional work. Yeah. We have provided our attendee list and they'll run it through their systems to see if it matches anyone.
That did not go through the link. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, there were a non-zero number of those because in particular, the Rosen where you're at least for some amount of the time, you could actually book it cheaper through the website than you could via the conference booking link. Although it wasn't actually cheaper because the conference booking link, I believe, did not include the resort fee. And if you booked direct, you ended up paying a resort fee on top of it. So it just looked cheaper, but I don't think it was actually cheaper.
Yeah. We negotiated all that into one single fee.
Yep. Hotels are weird.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, they are. They're there to make money. Let's face it.
Weird. Let's talk about the other really eye-opening thing. Food and beverage.
This was eye-opening for me. You guys were talking. Wow.
We talked about our ticket sales, right? How much we charged for tickets. Based on the budget for an average individual to come to my conference, and I'd like to initially point out that we did not serve breakfast on the first day of the conference on Monday. It's important to note that. But without that, my average cost just for food and beverage was $484 per person.
Yeah. So we were selling tickets at $399. That the direct cost was $484.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How do they figure that cost out with you? I mean, what do they do to figure out how many breakfasts, how many dinners, how many lunches?
So we provide them with the number of what we expect to sell, and not everyone's going to partake in food. Not everyone's going to partake in alcohol or drinks that are available, coffee. So costs can fluctuate depending on how they count it. And I've heard different methods of how they count.
We heard they count the silverware.
But every plate of food you get, depending on, like for breakfast, we had breakfast sandwiches and muffins and stuff. You could get some fruit and a coffee. That plate alone cost me $38.
$38 for breakfast. Wow.
To be
person.
fair, the food there was better than the food at a lot of other conferences I go to, right? So
another bit of feedback we got that I wasn't expecting.
We definitely didn't choose the highest food package. We could have gone a lot more expensive than we did. Spooner's dream of a fajita bar was crushed, I believe, right? Like, didn't you want
Oh,
taco
I
or
was gonna.
fajita bar or something?
It was that wasn't in our package. It was build your own fajitas. They would bring out all the stuff, and you'd go through the line
Right.
and put everything and build your fajitas. It'd be, but unfortunately, that wasn't in our contract negotiation rate, so I had to go with a different option. But yeah, it's expensive. just
Yeah.
just to feed, like, there's a minimum
Wow.
you have to get, and like to get the rooms. Like, I think our minimum was $65,000. And I budgeted for 182,000 just for food and beverage. And there was a couple of key important facts. We negotiated rates down as low as we could.
And we had a helper. We had a guy that plans conferences that did a lot of this.
That helps you the negotiations,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
We're also tax exempt in the state of Florida. So that saved about 15 grand.
Oh, absolutely, it did.
So that helped a lot. But the end, it's $484 per person is what it ended up costing me to feed and drink people. Just for the hotel provided food and beverage. Anything out of that was not in that calculation. That was specifically only for the hotel providing food and beverage for the times we served.
Is that the retroactive after the fact, after like based on the actual numbers, or was that budgeted number?
I don't have, that's the budgeted number. I don't have the final numbers fully yet. I should get them this month. That's the budgeted number based on 400 people.
Other interesting
vendors.
Things. Yeah, other interesting things that happened, right? Like, so the hotel kind of encouraged you to do a signature cocktail, which we jokingly made the Spoonie. And somehow the Spoonie ended up being the most expensive cocktail. It
was $12 per Spoonie.
What?
We sold like 200 of them.
144 the one day. We sold a gross of Spoonies.
Oh my gosh.
It's funny. A drink that I didn't name. I want to be very clear. I didn't name it. I was just, Wes Spencer named it. I just happened to have it, and it was called the Spoonie. But
that's funny.
I think we're gonna have another signature cocktail that's not the Spoonie. We're just gonna have a revolving internal meme discussion about naming a drink after someone and putting it out. I think that's gonna be a thing now.
I don't know, man. I think we need the dumpster fire. We can base it on the ChatGPT recipe.
I like that.
We drank one. It wasn't bad.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
But yeah, it's I got they gave us a cost breakdown. I think it was around $15,000 in alcohol per night.
It's actually not that bad. I mean,
that's just for alcohol.
Yeah, I mean, to give you context, though, right? Like last year at Secure, we ended up in a back room, and you were there, I think, right? There were like 20 of us in that room, and I ended up I ended up picking up most of the tab, and so we drank, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half back there. It was a $1,200 bill just for that little bit of time in that back room, and there were only like 20 or 30 of us. So in hindsight, $15K for alcohol is actually probably more economical to drink alcohol than it is to drink soda.
Oh, talk about that. Because I am now going to, when I go to a conference, I'm taking 2 or 3 cans of pop with me. I'm just gonna say that.
It's very expensive for things like that. Like, I'm sure you could probably go in any hotel and look at their meeting catering menu and see what their MSRP rates are. And then you have 2 things on top of those MSRP rates. You have a 26% service charge, and then you have tax, which is 6%, I believe. So that's an additional fees on top of the food and beverage. So it gets real expensive real fast.
What's a can of soda cost?
$8.
It's about $8 plus tax and fees.
Yeah,
that's incredible. Boy,
so
that's highway robbery.
I mean, in hindsight, like, if you have vendors and conferences you like, don't take the drinks, and if you have vendors and conferences you don't like, just push them all in the bag.
Yeah.
There's certain conferences I'm going to now where I'm just going to eat my food without a silverware, and there's other conferences where I'm going to take all of the silverware.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So talk about that silverware thing.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one.
So they have to figure out how to, like, you have to count how many that you serve, and there's only a couple of ways you can easily do that. Like, you can count plates, you can count people, which it's hard if they're coming up and down, and it's hard to keep track of who's who and what they're doing. So I've heard, I don't have this like firsthand experience that they're actually doing this, but that they'll count silverware taken as a method to determine how many they can put out, how many are gone, and they can just do the math and they how many you served, right?
That seems like a logical way to do it.
Yep.
But there's also a minimum. So when you send a hotel, I expect to sell, to have X many people for the full event. Even if you're under that, you're paying your minimum that you just sent.
Yep.
Right.
So
which
you
is
got to be
another
cautious with that.
People like me that maybe stay out a little bit too late, don't get up for breakfast, and then let's talk about the last real cost that I think goes into this, which is parties. Right, like we had a pretty good. I thought that was fun. Reasonably priced party at main event across the hall. What's something like that end up costing for tater kegs? All the tater kegs.
So just to give, so we went to main event, which for those who aren't familiar was kind of like a Dave and Buster's, an adult Chuck E. Cheese. They have bowling, arcade games, laser tag, stuff like that, and they have a bar and food. So the package we picked had an hour of open bar and food, and that cost me $33,000 for 4 hours, and we shared the space with someone else who was there.
Yeah, they were small.
Yeah,
I think that we ended up having the bar open for 2 hours. I thought.
Oh, it was 2 hours. Sorry, you're right.
Yeah, it was 2 hours. Yeah, because that was one of the feedback items is people wanted it open longer.
Yeah, which is fair.
Yeah,
but it was a 4 hour place. We basically rented out the whole venue, along with the other party that was with us, and it was like $33,000 for 4 hours of unlimited play, unlimited bowling.
Yeah,
you didn't win any tickets. Feedback was good there. Everyone had a good time.
Played laser tag.
Tag.
Whooped Kelvin's butt at basketball.
I can imagine you doing that laser tag thing. What was your final? I mean, because you weren't doing this to make money, right? I mean, Kyle, you were doing this for what the essence of a conference should be, which is to educate people, right?
Yeah. We made a profit. I don't have the final profit numbers yet, but that's just wrapping it into next year. Like, we're already planning 2024. So if you're interested in coming and having yourself and your technicians educated, we're running it back in 2024. Planning has already started. We're in talks with the hotel. But keep it in mind. We're going to try to keep costs very similar to what it was this year. We're just going to invite more people because
you're gonna charge more to the vendors, right?
Not much more.
Marginally more.
We don't. Again, we want to make this cost effective for all sides, and we want to make sure that everyone has a good time and enjoys themselves. But we also want to make sure that education is always first with what we try to do. That's the core of MSP Geek.
Yeah, the things, feedback. People really wanted breakfast that first day. People wanted longer at the bar, right? That'll cost money. I think that we'll try to get sponsors to bear the brunt of that additional cost and not put it on attendees.
Since I've got this in a nice Excel spreadsheet, if we added breakfast, it'd have been $560 per person this year.
That's $60.
That's
$80. That's $78 per person more for breakfast.
It's like 58, right?
No, I'm doing the math.
It's $37.92 is what we ended up being charged for breakfast.
But then there's the plus on it.
Yeah, all the service fees and having the people standing there and stuff. It's crazy to know that. I mean, if anybody's looking to do a conference, well, you got to think about a lot of things, right? Everyone I talked to at the other conference we went to right after, they loved it. It was educational. They felt it was something they would go to again. What was your percentage of first time attendees? Do you remember
53% had never been to a conference before.
Wow. And I bet you that 53% will come back.
Yeah, it's like 148 people had never been to a conference.
That's incredible.
And then, interestingly enough, the conference we went to right after it said they had 61%, but I found out later that it's 61% of people that had never been to that conference, not first-time conference attendees in total.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not really a super fair comparison.
It's interesting. That's actually a really, really good number. So I mean that shows that even in you guys doing your first one, first off, you got it out there and the right people knew about it, right?
Mhm.
And second is your guys' reputation, MSP GeekCon has a great reputation of educating, right?
I think it will be I think the bigger problem that we'll end up having in year 2, other than this giant laundry list of things that Spooner said not in year 1, 2 that we now have to consider, is that demand is going to be really high because of how high the feedback was, right? So like we're going to raise attendees a little bit, right? Like, but I think that it'll sell out, and it'll sell out early this year coming up. At least that's the hope.
I
right?
hope so.
That's a
I
good
would
problem.
love.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I would love to sell out an early bird. I have no problems making like we sold the brunt of our tickets in early bird. There's a couple of emails that people sent in was like, hey, I'm a nonprofit. Do you guys have any discounts available after the early bird had ended? And we provided some discount codes for them. There were some who footed the bill themselves to come to our conference who wasn't company sponsored. They decided to come on their own. And then we had some vendors who sponsored some tickets for people to come in, and we discounted those for the vendors as well. So it's actually cheaper because they bought a bulk of them. So we want to make sure everyone comes and has a good time. Education first, and then we had awesome events afterwards. Like we had a D&D night where which was overwhelmingly we didn't have enough DMs. So if anyone's interested in DMing next year, let me know. We need more. We had a tech bar after party, and that was probably the best tech bar that's ever happened. And we had backdoors and breaches. That's we had the giant Nerf war in there. We had the backdoors and breaches, which was a game by Black Hills Security, and John Strand and John Hammond went toe to toe in that, and that was a
shameless plug.
Huntress, yes. But it was great all around.
That's what's in this bag.
We had things for people to do outside the conference that relax people and get people to network and know each other, because as a community, we're social people. Find your areas, have conversations, start building people, because you can ask them questions. They may have solved something. You may be able to solve something for them. Just build that relationship, and that's what we're all about.
And try to normalize something outside of the bar track, right? Like a lot, especially the technical people, they don't want to sit at the bar until 2 a.m. So providing something else for them to do was very important to us.
I think you guys should just wrap this up. That was a great.
I think so.
I agree. I thank you, Kyle, for coming on. I know you're a busy guy. Jason and I kind of plan this every Tuesday, but you coming on to talk about this, I mean, it's important. And I hope that people are listening go to and research MSP GeekCon and MSP Geek, because it's a great organization. They're doing some awesome things. And
sure it gets in the show notes.
Put that in there, please. A big blast right in front of all our faces, please. Because what you do and what you're doing is important to this community. So thank you for that.
Any final word?
Thank you guys for coming. No, look, join if you're not a part of MSP Geek. It's free. Come join us. We're a large community. We have vendors. We have MSPs all around the world. Come to MSP GeekCon next year. It's going to be great. It's going to have fun. We've already found some problems that we didn't like this year and are improving it next year to make things better, like serving breakfast on the first day. And it's going to be a lot of fun with a lot of learning, and it's super important because the technicians don't ever get trained. There's no focus on the core brunt of most managed services company. Like no one trains their technicians the way they need to be, and they're afraid for them to get certifications. We're not providing certifications; we're providing skills.
Skills are important. All right, thank you guys, and everyone, make it a great day.
Have a good day. See ya.